Podcasts, where we're joined today by myself, DJD, and guest star Produce Farmer.
Hey, I'm back.
A rare appearance, but appreciated for sure. And we are unfortunately absent Johnny Bailey this week.
The budget couldn't hold it over for all three of us.
Yeah. We can only afford 2 mics at a time, okay? Like the electric bill just shoots way too far up, So
Yep. I mean that's how it goes.
and of course in the back, mixing the beats, or I guess just the mixer. Craig.
Yeah, all those beats. Boom, 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 boom.
So Farmer, it's been a little bit. How are you, buddy? How's it
Oh,
going?
good. Good. Just crazy, man. Been busy. It's only getting worse, but it was nice to kind of like swap days for me. I just know Saturday nights are just like getting usually that by the end of the week, that's the day I'm like collapse and I need to just go to bed or something soon, like early and start the week over. But so Saturday's been a little bit tough with everything going on, but it's been good. It's been good getting things done around here. But we had a bunch of trees. We had a chop down, and we didn't chop them down. We used the chainsaw, but it sounds cool when you say chop. So we
I
had
mean,
to take.
sawing is kind of like chopping, though. Kind of, right? A little bit.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I mean,
mean, yes and no. I mean, you get the same. You get this. You get somewhat of the same results, but you're not going through the same motion. You know, because you're holding a machine, a chainsaw to like do all the cutting for you. When you're using an axe, it's going to take a lot longer. Let's just say that. It's just going to take a lot more longer, and it's going to take a lot more effort, and you're going to be a lot more sore. But that being said, doing a chainsaw all day will still keep you very sore because it's motion all the time, and it's not a light piece of hardware either. So anyways, about 2 weeks ago my dad came over and we did that. So we're chopping wood and that sort of thing, and by the time we got like he kind of got one thing you'll have to know when somebody's chainsawing, once they get in the groove, you got to be worried a little bit because they'll start cutting everything down if you're not careful, because they just like, oh yeah, I'll cut that down, cut that. And I just found out just a couple days ago that he cut down a couple things I wasn't wanting to get cut down, but I didn't know. So just keep that in mind, everybody. If you have
yeah, all
somebody who
those
gets
of
in the
you with
groove,
chainsaws at home, yeah, just be aware of that.
anybody who's
It's a
hired somebody with a
gateway.
chainsaw, you have to make
Yeah.
sure you put ribbons around the ones you don't want to get cut. That's all I'm saying. You gotta plan for this stuff. But so the last couple weekends we've been kind of working through getting all the brush because I mean we fell like 4 or 5 trees and then all the limbs off of those trees. So we've been doing that. So that's been keeping me pretty busy. How about you? It's been a bit.
Yeah, it has been a bit. I don't know. Like the world's in uh a pretty crazy place right now. So I mean, like
Yeah.
that's been occupying a lot of my attention.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's that. There's that.
yeah. The chainsaw thing reminds me of like my parents actually had a couple trees chainsawed recently, and they definitely had more trees cut down than they planned on for a
Yes. See,
similar reason. So
that's
it
what I'm
seems to
telling
be
you.
a thing. Yeah, yeah. But also, I'm always reminded whenever someone brings up a chainsaw of Resident Evil 7, where spoilers for that really old game. When did that game come out? Uh,
7, that's eight like 8 years ago
was
at
it
this
that
point.
long ago? It might have
Maybe
been.
not that long, but it feels like that long.
Yeah, no, you're right on the money. Actually, January 2017.
Man,
Wow, that's
wow. I'm
wild.
so
That's
good.
insane.
Boom.
That's a
I'm
really
gone, but
good
I'm not
guess.
really gone, am I?
Yeah. What episode do you think this is of the Announce Here podcast?
Oh, of a Announce Year podcast.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so this is probably 74 or something like that.
I mean, you're kind of close, I guess.
I guess. Where are we at?
Yeah. This is like episode 56 or whatever, or something like that. Like, it's
Oh,
like, yeah,
I
you're kind of
guess.
close.
I guess I was overcompensating for the fact I knew. I thought we'd be higher, but I guess we did have a
Well,
couple weeks we skipped. So
right. And that also brings up the elephant sitting with us in the room, the Republican elephant, because that's what elephants are best known as, the symbol of the Republican Party. RIP. Is that we we're recording on a new day. We're recording on a Monday right now instead of our normal Saturday, and
yeah, we're shaking
that
things
I'm
new for the
hoping
year,
that
right?
Johnny can still like master this and like produce it in a way that we can still get it out on Friday, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, if not, maybe that's something we can try to figure out. Who knows? But I mean, Johnny's been doing a good job, so why deviate from something that's been going so well, right?
Well, and I like the consistency of it. Like, I mean, like, I'm a big fan of even if there's something that like someone else might have like a better, like, not even a better, but like a different way of doing or whatever. Like, I think that kind of interrupts like the consistency of things.
Right.
So,
For
like,
sure. If one of us
yeah,
took it, it would definitely be different because we're just different,
yes.
no matter how we
And
try.
worse. It would be worse, undeniably so. But I mean, like, you know, like even if we had like T-Pain mastering the podcast, right? Like, I mean, like it would be different, you know? Like, I
It
mean,
would
like,
be,
yeah,
yeah, we'd have to have his own little artistic stamp on it because we
yeah.
know how these artists are.
We'd all have auto tune and everything. I'm just kidding, T-Pain.
Wow.
Don't.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm just saying right now, this would be pretty cool. I'm actually getting down with this. Maybe have like a little backbeat, going on too. But I mean, if we're gonna dream, might as well dream big at this point.
But also, we missed last week. We missed last week because nobody was here except for me and Craig, and Craig didn't want to talk. And honestly, I wasn't really in the mood for talking either. Because back to chainsaws, Resident Evil 7. Uh
Flashback. If
oh
this was
well, no, this kind of works. I can make this work. I can make this work. Okay, we're gonna go back. Hang on, because I didn't really feel like talking because Monolith Studio got shut down last week, and that was really sad for me.
Oh man, I know. And did wait, I just saw the effect of the whoosh, whoosh. Like we need to add that in there, right there when it flipped back to you. But yeah, man, that is just I can't believe it, honestly. Like,
Yeah, Monolith Productions, like they made they're most famous for like the Mordor games, the Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor and the Middle Earth Shadow of War, which are the best Lord of the Ring games to come out in a long, long time.
hmm
They also did Gotham City Imposters.
such an
They
underrated game that was so much fun, honestly. And my
truly,
favorite
yeah.
that they did, honestly, like I like all those games, but like the most iconic back in the 360 days, you know which one I'm going to talk about, right? You know which one I'm bringing up. The
I'm not
Guardians
sure.
of Middle Earth. Isn't
Yes,
that wasn't that
yes,
done
yeah,
by
yeah,
them?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Same
Such a
year as
good game.
Gotham City Imposters, actually. Somehow they cranked
Somehow,
out
like,
both those titles in
whew,
the same year.
that's
But
just crazy.
like yeah, like Guardians of Middle Earth, a MOBA that was just like 5 years too early to really capitalize on the MOBA phase.
I feel
Uh,
like both those games were just a little bit too early, and we talked about, I think, on the podcast about like we were hoping that they'd come back, especially
yeah.
the Gotham City Imposters. I was like, I remember talking something like that. But of course, Guardians of Middle Earth,
Well,
phenomenal game. I love
I'm
that
not
game.
sure if you know this. I'm pretty sure you do. So I 100% in Shadow of Mordor. That's like that is
Yeah, that's your claim to
the,
fame.
that's my, honestly, the one that I'm proudest of 100%ing because there's a lot of luck involved and there's a lot of time that was involved in 100%ing that game. But I was so close that I just had to. And I never
hmm
100% games, but like I had to, right? And like I loved that game so much. And so like I put in the time, I put in the effort, I 100%ed it. And then I tweeted at Monolith when Shadow of War came out, hey, I will 100% this game, which looking at the achievements, it seemed even harder. Uh, I will 100% this game if you bring Guardians of Middle Earth to back compat at least, if not like a remaster or something. And the cowards, they didn't do it. So now they're shut down, which sucks. But I like it.
Just think, if they brought that back, they might not have. Who
But
knows?
also, the latest game they were working on was, well, let's go through their catalog here for a second. They went through, like, they've been around since like 97, so a long time, right? They actually did Fear, like the original Fear
The
game.
original Fear game.
Yeah.
Wow, I did
And
not know
its
that.
sequel. Yeah, I didn't know that either. And then they did like Tron 2.0.
Wow, man, all these good games here.
Yeah, they did like an old Alien versus Predator 2 game back in like 2001 or so. Like, I mean, they don't have like a lengthy catalog, but they have like some pretty good hits. I would say like half their games were like re- really good games that I played, and then the other half I just never played, so I don't know how good they were. But
Right.
yeah,
Well,
they did
some
the
of those
Matrix
just might not be
Online,
our
which I
styles,
always
right?
wanted to play but never got around to. You know, I mean, like yeah. But the latest game they were working on was Wonder Woman, and that was allegedly going to use their patented Nemesis system, which they use in Shadow of Mordor, where essentially enemies recognize you and there's a hierarchy to the enemies that you face and everything. And like they recall details about your past interactions with them. And it's a really cool system that I had no clue how that would be used in Wonder Woman. But I was excited to see, and now we'll never
Right.
know. You know, I mean,
Exactly.
like,
Well, and the
like
whole Nemesis system is a groundbreaking system that we've talked about, hoping to see it used in more places. Which, I mean, there are ways that it could be used, and I've heard talk maybe they would bring it, which is kind of weird. I've heard talks that it could be brought into the Arkham games potentially, because they're starting to work on new stuff, and that is something that they could use. But it's interesting because Arkham started the whole combat system, the flawless, the free flow system, and then they Monolith kind of went off of that for Shadow of Mordor, right? And then it's interesting that, okay, now Monolith actually, they had their own thing, you know, and it would be really interesting to see that Arkham would actually take something that they left behind. It's almost like full circle. Like, we're gonna help you, you can help us. But I mean, I'd be interested. I'm also
like
really excited for the next Arkham game, in general. If it's what I think it's going to be, which I've heard rumors, and I really hope it is.
I mean, what have you heard like the Batman Beyond rumors or
Yeah, I've heard
yeah,
it's the Batman Beyond rumors, and
yeah.
man,
Like
I would
there are
I would
like
drop every other
no
game to play that game.
yeah. So Jason Schreier was on a podcast recently talking about like how
On
Warner
our podcast,
Brothers no, not on
man,
ours,
we
but
need
like
we need
on
to get
the
guest podcast
we
stars,
we
right?
do actually. Yeah, that'd be great. I'll hit up my Rolex, my Rolodex. There we go.
Rolex. Woo! Okay. Rolling the money.
Rolling, yeah, no. I prefer Apple Watch anyway. It's fine. I don't need a Rolex. Uh, I'll hit up my Rolodex, see if I can't get some people on here for certain topics. But yeah. So Jason Schreier was talking about how like Warner Brothers, like they're essentially the big thing behind Warner Brothers like recent like implosion, so to speak, because they shut down 3 studios and they're doing a bunch of restructuring of their games division, is not necessarily related to like the larger Warner Brothers like issues, because it's all stuff that had been going on before, where like essentially their leadership was just afraid to commit to anything because like they weren't
Hmm.
sure if the risk was worth it.
Right.
And so like there would be all these decisions that needed to be made and then leadership wouldn't make them, right? And so like apparently The guy who was in charge, he's on his way out. There's a new guy coming in. New guy seems cool. Like, hopefully Warner Brothers games can get their act together. I think it'll be like half a decade before they actually like before we see whether they're able to or not. Because I think this is a huge hit. Between this, the failure of Suicide Squad, the failure of like, just overall, like Warner
Oh
Brothers
yeah.
games just not being able to put out anything that sticks really well besides Hogwarts Legacy, right? Like, I
Hmm.
mean, like, there was that Quidditch game, which, like, hasn't really taken off or anything. There
Yeah,
were a
I
bunch
mean,
of like multiplayer games that kind of like just never happened, got canceled or whatever.
and to
Like,
go off to
yeah.
like that Quidditch game, it's just it's almost, I would say, a very indie like title. I don't know why. It
Which
just
is fine. I think it's
it's
fine for studios
fine.
to have those, right? Like EA
No.
has like what's that game that just came out? Split Fiction, right? By the makers of Take Two. Or
Yeah.
not Take Two. It Takes Two.
Yeah.
The like the co-op game that's like got
Mm-hmm.
the screen split in half and everything. Like,
Split
and
Fiction. I
what
was
was
just
the
actually going to
other?
bring that up, and
Yeah,
that
what
one
was
looks
the
like
other
a really
game
good
that they
game.
did?
Um,
The crime game.
I don't know. I've only played It Takes Two from that studio, I believe.
No, we've definitely played the other one.
Maybe
Shoot.
I'd know it if I saw it, maybe, kind of thing. What? Let me look it up here.
Hang on. A Way Out. There we go.
Oh yeah, I played that. Just was that them?
That was them. Yeah, that was the same studio. But like EA has like this one studio. Granted, they had more, and those studios have all been like dissolved. But like I don't know that they've all been dissolved, but we haven't seen a lot of like the EA original games, right? Uh, like this is one of the few studios still making those EA originals, and then you have Ubisoft originals with the Prince of Persia game that came
Mm.
out, The Lost
Mm-hmm.
Crown, which then they killed that team. I think it's actually good for these bigger studios to like have these smaller games because then you still like have like these smaller games with smaller teams that are coming out in between like these bigger games, like these tentpoles. And I think it actually builds a lot of goodwill for those studios and for the overall publisher, right? Like I think this is a great thing for EA. I think like Ubisoft like original games are a great thing for Ubisoft, but apparently these studios don't see it that way because they don't like, bring in like massive sales sometimes.
Yeah, and
Although Split Fiction is
that's
doing
the
really good, so I
problem.
mean like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They are, but that's the problem with having that mindset. They don't realize how much they're like, even though they're not bringing in maybe always the green, or the black on the chart, or so to speak. Um, they're doing something for the ecosystem and doing something for their brand, and that's
Right.
a lot outside of always making bank.
Well, and they're bringing in good games made by small studios that have a very specific vision for their games that players enjoy. Like I think that's the
Right,
biggest
and
thing.
and they're
And just-
authentic because these studios believe in what they're doing, and that goes a lot further than just trying to, you know, hit the market all the time.
right. Yeah. So I mean, like that's it's a little bit disappointing that like things aren't necessarily working out that way. It seems like WB Games is planning to focus on shoot what all like their core franchises essentially. So like Batman, Harry Potter, and I think like two other things, right? And that's where all their money is going to go is just on those licensed properties that they own or whatever. Uh, they sold off Lord of the Rings, so like they don't have that anymore.
Well, that
I
that
yeah,
could be a good thing, actually, instead of it, just being, pigeon-toed into one developer for it,
like
one
maybe,
studio.
but like so
And we might actually avoid a golem, right? I don't know. We'll see.
well, so Lord of the Rings was sold to what? Embracer, I think.
Embrace your group, yeah.
And then they split into three entities, and one of those was called Lord of the Rings and Friends or something like Middle Earth Enterprises and Friends, right? But I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily know, like, with Embracer doing as badly as they were in terms of debt, because I think they hugely, like, overextended. And sorry, this is a very video game heavy, like, like news, like, podcast here.
Yeah, well,
But,
that's what that's our specialty.
but like with Embracer Group, like, essentially, like, overextending and then having to like restructure majorly and like cancel a bunch of stuff. I don't necessarily know that the Lord of the Rings like is in the best place. I know Amazon is still working on that Lord of the Rings MMO,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I guess they have it licensed out or something. And I'm curious to see what they do with that because their last two MMOs haven't been the best received. Like I think they were fun enough or whatever. Actually, have you played New World?
I have not. No.
So I played New World on Xbox during like a free play like weekend or whatever, and like I actually found out that I actually really enjoy MMOs with controller. Which I knew this a little bit because played Neverwinter back in the day, you know, and like I played a little bit of like oh gosh, I'm blanking. Uh, Black Desert. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like so I think if WoW came to console, which is the hope and the rumor, like that I would actually really, really get into
Yeah,
that a lot
I
more than
wouldn't
I do.
see a reason why it wouldn't at this point, especially if there is this handheld device coming. I think that would just make sense at this point, right?
Right.
To bring it all and connect everybody, and
But
you
like,
know what?
I mean, so
Go.
like Amazon can make fun MMOs. They just don't seem to have much staying power. And they seem to be like kind of, I don't know. Well, it feels weird to say this, but like they're kind of generic. And like MMOs are just such a hard thing to like stay alive because like they require so much like effort and content in like a crowded market. Like I just don't necessarily know. Like WoW would do fine, obviously, because WoW has like that built-up base that it can survive pretty much anything at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
like, man, remember like all the MMOs I used to get you to play with me, like way back in the day, like 10, 12, 15 years ago, you know? I mean, like, and almost none of those are around anymore. Like, it's like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, the landscape has changed a lot in
It's
terms of that.
definitely changed, and it's continued to change as it always does, really. But it's interesting where we're at right now. I mean, they just also to kind of keep it to keep it on the heavy side. Respawn just canceled
Oh my
one of
gosh,
their
that's right.
projects, and I'm
Yes,
not
they did.
not too happy about that either. I was
Well,
really looking to see something into the vein of Apex or Titanfall, and that's what it was rumored to be, something like that. And Respawn just does a really good job with a fast-paced setting game, and I was ready to sink my teeth into that game, and it's just kind of disheartening. So I don't know. It was just I don't know. I don't want to say fortunate, but I was fortunately the whole thing. Respawn isn't all going away, but
right.
the fact that this
Yeah.
small studio that was working on something kind of secret project esque is going away, and that's kind of like, oh, come on.
Well, like I know that they had that Star Wars project a while ago, and the rumor that I saw, and I don't know how much I trust the source, but like, you know, like because people online can kind of just make things up sometimes or all the time.
Yeah,
But
yeah, you have to be careful.
like always, always, always check your sources, no matter what it is. But the rumor I saw was that this was essentially the so Respawn was working on a Star Wars first person shooter a while ago, and
Hmm.
that got canceled. And then this secret project, from what I understand, from what I heard, from what I saw online, that was all rumors, nothing confirmed. I don't have a second source for it. Was that essentially they were trying to rework those assets, or like some part of that they were trying to salvage as like a an original IP or something else. So like so this secret project could have just been like that Star Wars thing on life support as they try to figure out another way to make it work after the Star Wars project fell through. In
It's
which case,
possible.
this could just be like a drawing out of a cancellation that happened a while ago. You know, which would be probably the best possible like thing to like happen, I guess, in terms of that, because I'd hate to think that it was like Titanfall 3 that was canceled or
Right,
something.
right.
Um,
But
because like
I
they
either
have
way
to
you
know
go,
that there's like a desire for Titanfall 3, and
oh
like my
yeah,
hope would be that
they
like
know.
that they yeah, that they wouldn't give up on that so easily. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
that would be my
I don't
hope.
think they would. I do think it was probably more like a maybe not a AAA title like project. Maybe it was something to fill in the gaps or something while they wait on for something else, and it just like you said fell through. But I mean, still the fact that it could be Star Wars or Titanfall universe still kind of like pulls at me a little bit.
Oh, it still
But
hurts for sure. Like
yeah,
a Star Wars FPS by Respawn, please come on. I would play that. I would
yeah,
love
no,
that. Like
that
it could be
that
like
might
a 6 out of 10 game, and I would still enjoy the heck out of it. Like my gosh,
something
like
about that
Respawn
their
didn't do
fast
it.
play, yeah, the fast paced gameplay. Yeah, I mean, it would
Yeah.
just be. I mean, it couldn't be that low, honestly. I mean, it would just it. They're just too well polished in the way that they do those things. And
Yep.
it would just be such a fast paced Star Wars game that we've never experienced. It would be great. It would be great for like a bounty hunter game, honestly, because that's what you need, something like that. That's, you're not doing the whole Jedi Star Wars kind of thing because I mean they've already done that with Fallen Order. So they switch
Right.
gears
Yeah.
and we're going FPS. We're going in hard and we're going in like into places that you've never seen. And that's
Like
what you hope for a new game like that, right? In Star
remake
Wars.
remake Battlefront 2's campaign, but do it in an interesting way where you're actually an Imperial the whole way through. That'd be
Yeah,
crazy. That'd be like
anything like
really
that.
interesting. Yeah.
Interacting with all these, these facets of the universe that we just barely get a glimpse of. That's
Yeah.
what I want to see, when any of these especially like Respawn, if somebody like that gets into it, you can expect something, awesome, something breathtaking, something different, something that, especially from a Star Wars standpoint that we're always looking to experience different angles because we're always getting
Yes.
the Star Wars Jedi thing. And I love it, don't get me wrong, but there's so much more to the universe than that. We've talked about this plenty. But
Well,
that's kind
yeah,
of like
like
this whole Skywalker saga thing, or any of the Jedi thing. I mean, it is prevalent, it's relevant, it's awesome, but there's so much more.
but I mean like also like that's what we loved about like the old Republic, right? Was that like they did find a way, I feel
Yeah,
like,
very true.
to
Yeah.
balance out like the other classes that like a Jedi wasn't necessarily the class that you wanted to play, right? Like I feel like being a commando or being
Yeah,
any of the
Republic
other
Commando,
like
yeah.
smugglers, like or whatever, like like there were a lot of different classes that weren't force focused that were just as interesting and just as cool. And I feel like they balanced that out pretty well.
Well, and there's been several games like Republic Commando, like you didn't even have to have, there was nothing like that. It was just all soldier based,
Right.
And also the Kyle Katarn games. Like there's a little bit of Jedi, but it's also a lot of smuggler stuff, a lot of blastering, and it's just a different element, and that's awesome, Getting something a little bit different, a little different flavor of the same thing that you love, And I'd love to see actually one of those games, like a Jedi Outcast. I mean, I know they just did their remaster, but it really needs like a remake. I would love to see those games on a remake, something like that. The Kyle Katarn series or something like that. Or it doesn't even have, they could move on from him, but something like that, bounty hunter esque.
Sure. Yeah. Or even like Star Wars Bounty Hunter remade. Ooh, just got
Yeah,
chills. Like that
remake. With
1313 project or whatever. Like I
yes,
mean, but like yeah.
something like that,
One of the
something
thing
like
that
that.
like I thought was kind of interesting, kind of going back because like I bringing up Galaxies while bringing up Lord of the Rings. No, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. Bringing up the Old Republic. That's what I meant to say. Bringing up the Old Republic reminded me of Galaxies. Did you see this spiritual sequel that's just got kickstarted, called Stars Reach.
I have not. Stars Reach. I'm gonna look at it up right now.
So Stars Reach had a 200,000 Kickstarter goal. It must be nice to like be able to like have an idea that people like want to fund so well that like, hey, yeah, no problem, we'll raise 200K, or like in Star Citizen's world, like multiple millions. But I mean, like,
Yeah,
uh,
Star Citizen, man, that's a conundrum of a conundrum. Like a game that like
it's an
really
Alpha 4.0 now or something like that. So I mean, like, hey, maybe it'll come out sometime.
Yeah.
Time,
I
we'll
mean,
see.
you can buy into it at any time, buddy.
But yeah, so Stars Reach was essentially, it was being funded by investors, but then they announced a Kickstarter campaign, uh, and they got the additional funding that they wanted from that very quickly. But essentially, it's a spiritual sequel to Ultima Online and the Star Wars Galaxy from someone who worked on both of those. And essentially, his whole idea is, what he wanted to do was bring back the whole idea that combat doesn't need to be the focus of an MMO, that you can do anything in the world. And so, like, the trailer seems kind of interesting, where, like, he's showcasing, like, house building or whatever, and, like, people getting together to, like, figure out how to get to various new places and stuff. Like, one of the things that he mentioned was, like, there was once there was a sea of lava and they figured out how to freeze it. So, like, the player base in and of themselves, like, kind of banded together to freeze the lava to cross it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and
No,
this is
this
all
looks
like
cool.
alpha testers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, like, essentially, yeah, like, it's about like, crafting being just as important as combat or whatever, or like, like you can be a bard, I'm assuming, or like, just play music or whatever, or be a trader, or be like, a farmer, or, like essentially you can do whatever you want in the world, which, like, that was the big controversial thing that might have potentially killed Galaxies, was like when they switched to like being very, very combat focused, right? And if Johnny was here, he could like add more input on that. But like, because he lived through that. But like, I remember
Yeah,
there being a
I
lot of
never
people
even
being upset about that, like Galaxy switching to like essentially a combat focused, like kind of like vision, and that being the breaking point for a lot of people of like, hey, you just kind of took what this game is and kind of like ruined it a little bit.
Yeah, I was never we never had that game, and so I never really got into Galaxies, and but I mean I always wanted to. I remember thinking, "Oh wow, this is really cool. It's online." But at the time, we probably didn't have a computer to run it anyhow. but the whole online thing that was so new around that time. It's just like,
Right. Yeah.
it's like, oh, you always hear the bad stories about these people online. So, at that time, it was like, you can't get online. It was dial up anyways, so, it just didn't happen. But I remember being at the store looking at that game thinking, this is a Star Wars game and you can do it with so many people. This is amazing. And just thinking, man, this would be awesome to experience.
Well, like, one of my favorite things about like Red Dead on is the ability to just kind of do whatever you want in that world and just live in it, right? Like, I love that immersiveness. And I think it'd be really cool to see MMOs kind of, or at least an MMO, kind of like fill that gap. I know Black Desert Online does it a little bit, but like, I mean, like, it'd be cool to see other games like also kind of like give you an opportunity to kind of just become immersed in a world where it's not all about like killing, you know.
Yeah,
It's just,
exactly.
like,
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
most games are geared around violence, and
yeah,
it is a breath of fresh
or
air when you
action,
have
I guess.
something.
I mean, like, to put it
Well, I
lightly,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, it's violence. Let's say what you will. Um, most games, most games have that function, and I think that's the most people gravitate towards that, which I get it. I've been a Halo fan for forever, and that's mostly what that game is. But it is nice to have a game, where you just do something else, like I love puzzlers, I love exploration games for that reason. I mean, crafting games, like, I mean, Minecraft, sure, there's a combat aspect of it, but most of it is just about building and exploring, and there's just something special about doing that with your friends, and or even by yourself, but just like finding new things. And it I think there's a lot more of that aspect, like you said, that needs to come back, and we need to not forget about that,
Right.
on these games going forward. Because yeah, it's so easy to be like, okay, we're just gonna create these things, we're gonna shoot, because that's just the general rule of thumb is like, okay, we need a game, okay, we need things in the game to fight. And that's, again, while that works really good for some games, I think we need to branch out a little bit for sure. There's well, I mean that's, I guess that's the fun game, the fun things in general, like with some of the Nintendo games where it's like, well, there is action, there's an exploration, but it's not necessarily, gritty violence or anything like that. Like you could even say like, well, they just capture them or something like that. And that's what something that makes those games a little bit special as well, is it's just like um there's just so much, I don't know, character to it. I guess they just add a little extra element to it. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent on on this, but it's just nice to see them take it on a different level. Take it
Yep.
a different step, a different angle. Kind of like,
It's
almost
like
like the
it's like
mantra,
a
like we
new
were doing
tree
talking about.
being
Yeah,
sprouted up, you know?
yeah,
Like, I mean, a
something
new tree
different.
being planted that's like a little bit different than others, and it's nice to see, like, at
And
least
there's
that
nothing
attempt
wrong
being
with a
made.
different tree. It's
And
nice
I
to have
hope
the
that
other
it,
trees, but
yeah, exactly, yeah. And I hope it grows well, and I hope that it's enjoyed by lots of people. But, like, we'll see, Like, I mean, like, I'm always skeptical of these things until they actually, like, are implemented, and executed. Just because, like, there's so many things that, like, we get so like hyped up in our own expectations of what something will be, and then like we get so disappointed sometimes when it's not exactly what we envisioned, right? But
right.
it
We
is
we we
still
all have
cool.
these preconceptions of these things that it's got to be this way, and then when it's
Right.
not, we just like, you know what, I'm not even gonna try it now, and
But it
just
is
give it a
still
go,
cool
give it a go.
too to see like it being attempted, right? Like something different. Because I feel like so much of like what video games are right now is like because the landscape is so shaky, because studios like way overextended or whatever, and like are getting shut down now as a result of that, right? Because like when everyone was staying indoors and got those stimulus checks and like were like investing it all in like entertainment, like and now don't have that additional funds, and like so games aren't making as much, because people actually have lives again and stuff, and need to actually like spend money that they worked for.
Yeah,
Like,
and I've talked to a guy who was going had to go out. So let's say at COVID, everybody was working remote, but now 5 years later, a lot of these people are being called back. So that means
yeah,
extra gas, extra wear and tear on your vehicle, and
yeah,
not being home to be remote. So they have those, those breaks to do these things. I mean, you
one
think
and
about, if you
yeah.
drive, that's like an hour. I mean, it can be an hour both ways. So that's cuts a lot into your time.
When like the Domino's CEO, I think it recently came out saying like, hey, like people just aren't ordering pizza like delivery anymore. Like they just aren't as much. Which I still see a lot of Uber Eats and DoorDashing going on. So I mean, like, I don't think we're like in really bad straits until like that slows down significantly. But also, like, I mean, with the way that prices are rising right now, like the way the economy is looking, with the like way that things are going with these tariffs and stuff, like I mean, like who knows, I mean, like I would be financially like unsure, if nothing else uncertain, like there would be a lot of fiscal uncertainty for me when it comes down to it. And so like I mean, like especially if I was a video game company, I would be very nervous about like doing something new, like I mean something unproven, especially when we've seen like so many things recently come out that have failed, right? Like oh gosh, what's that that magic game that I just played? Immortals
Yeah,
something.
it was like a still
Man,
game that I haven't played, but I got
you
finally because it was on
should.
so many
You
cells.
absolutely should
But yeah,
play it.
Immortals, and
Yeah.
then the other one we've been playing as a co-op also was really
Immortals of
good.
Avium. There we go. Yeah.
Immortals of Avian, and
Yeah.
the one that we've been playing. What's the name of that one? Like again, an older title game, but it has co-op. You know, the one in the sand. I can't remember. I can never remember that name. Outla is it?
I can
What's
never
the name?
remember either, and I don't know if that's a like in terms of that.
Maybe
Like
maybe
I
this
kind of
is
worry like
maybe
maybe
we're workshopping it and figuring
in
out.
that
Okay.
uh
I'm looking it up right now. Let's see. It's you can't be that
but
far
like
away.
seeing all these games, and you can look it up and like bring it up when you find it. Like seeing all these games come out that like failed, that are like new things that could have been entire franchises if they were willing to be supported, you know? Like Anthem on, you know? I mean like it's really kind of like I understand why certain developers and certain publishers are like tripling down on sequels and like axing everything else when it doesn't do as well as they had hoped. You know, I understand that. I don't like it. I hate it, but I understand it. You know, uh,
Atlas Fallen.
there we go.
Atlas
Atlas
Fallen.
Fallen.
And yeah, but yeah, like so yeah, I mean we're in an interesting spot for sure. I mean, you could like 10 years ago again, people were like, okay, it's time to invest into something different, you know, because the market's huge. Now the market's dwindling a little bit. So I totally get try not to be out there trying to be something, you know, different from the norm, but at the same time, you know, there's room for but it has to be done right. And again, a lot of this stuff is almost timing too.
And
Like
the well, yeah, that's
you just
true.
don't know. Like sometimes these hits become hits and you don't expect them. You know, they just happen. And then other times like a triple A title game. Like I don't know, again, we've seen so many in the last couple years that should be like just straight up blockbuster selling games, right? Um and there nobody knows about them, you know, not until like a year or two after. And why is that?
Well, I mean, there's so much noise out there right now too, right? Like it's
And
hard
that's
for me
again,
to
that's
keep up
part of it
with
too.
like even
When you
just
have
AAA releases. Like it's tough
when
to
you're a
keep up with.
gamer and you're a PC gamer, a PlayStation gamer, an Xbox gamer, a Switch gamer, and then you have all the noise from AAA, and of course they're probably trying to maintain the market for the most part, but then you have really good indie developers that are, you know, breaking ground. You
Yeah,
know, it's just like there's a lot out there. And then you got your mainstay games that want to keep you in the games too. Like
right.
all these subscription, you know, season pass games like Fortnite or any games like that. You know, they want to keep you in their game. Well, there's gonna be less games, single player games that you play because of these multiplayer games.
With the exception of Fortnite, it's weird to think because, like, I'm excluding Fortnite from this a little bit. Although I would say, even with Fortnite, I think my statement would still hold true. It's really weird to think about that Microsoft is the number one live service game producer. That's really weird to think about, but they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, they've got like Grounded as like I guess not really a live service, but like they're adding new content to it as it goes. Like I mean, like I guess maybe they had their final update like a little while ago. I'm not sure, but then they also are like continuing to add content to things like Starfield, which is more traditional game, I guess, with expansions and stuff. But then they also own WoW. They own Diablo. They also have Sea of Thieves going. You know, like I mean, like they are actually like the most successful at like keeping games running. Halo Infinite, they're continuing to add content to. You know, for better or worse, Halo Infinite is actually a live service game. You know, and I
Yep.
think honestly, when it came down to it, they're doing a fairly decent job with it. I think they just lost too many people with like the beginning portion of
Yep.
Halo Infinite. Like if they hadn't lost those people, I think that like most people would probably be pretty positive on Halo Infinite. And I am curious if Halo Infinite ever comes to PlayStation, which it might happen, it probably will at
It
some point,
could.
maybe.
Right.
Like I wonder if that would revitalize it a bit. I wonder if maybe that's one of the things that they're looking at in terms of like, uh, this whole like releasing games like as like a third party publisher to an extent.
Well, and I'm interested to see what they do with the whole. Okay, are we maintaining Halo Infinite? Going forward, even up to where Halo Studios come in and do what they're gonna do. Is the next game gonna have the multiplayer? I mean, they probably will. That's kind of like a staple. You can't release one without the other. Or are they
Right.
going to break the trend?
But
You know?
also, Farmer, I would have said that it's impossible to A, ever release a Halo game without co-op, period, you know?
Hmm.
And then B, for them to release a Halo FPS game, like a mainline Halo game, without co-op at launch. And they did both those things with
Exactly.
both
So
like Spartan Assault and Halo Infinite. Yeah.
so it's anybody's game at this point. I mean, I want to see them continue to support Halo Infinite, and we always go back to this, and I still feel like they're wasting some of Halo Infinite, but they're moving on, so I got to move on myself. But
I don't know.
um,
Like I could see like Halo Infinite launching on PlayStation, becoming revitalized, and then that's their multiplayer like continuing to do thing. But I could
yeah,
also see them going, you know what? Nah, we're switching everything over just because that engine that we worked on for way too long, like, is just too much pressure to deal with. I could see that.
yeah,
Like I
it's
mean,
probably
yeah,
too tedious to work with because you know there's probably certain things like as with
Slip Space.
anything
That's such a
computer.
cool name,
It's
but
such a cool name,
yeah.
but you when you think about like something that correlates and works and is compatible with everything, you want to be on that same engine to make things across the board, just seamless. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles that they've had with Slip Space Engine is that okay, yeah, they had to create it, but that means they have to maintain it and they have to create all these tools to be able to manage all of this stuff that's going on with it. If you're doing something else with that's already there for so many people, it's kind of like the whole problem I've had with my graphics card, you know and things not being compatible. If you use the right thing, then things are easier, but if you use the thing that's not developed for as much, then it's going to be tough. And
Or like last year when I was doing this super complicated setup using like multiple switchers and splitters and stuff. Like I mean like I had to have everything plugged in just so and plugged in the right order to work. And if any of that got the slightest bit messed up or like plugged in the wrong order, it wouldn't work. Like I mean like yeah, it's a delicate system sometimes.
yep.
But like
Yep.
to see like Microsoft kind of like taking a chainsaw to slip space, right? And to see like all these other developers taking a chainsaw to like their
Well,
studios and like new
they took a chainsaw
franchises
to
and stuff.
343. 343 is chainsaw.
That's true. Yeah.
They're completely different now. They're a whole different
Yeah.
studio. We
Yeah.
well,
Which I'm okay with. I'm excited for the future of Halo, but we'll see what it
it
is.
should have
Yeah.
always been Halo Studios, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I mean, but so I'm excited for this start for that. I think a reset's good for them in
Yeah.
general because it's just been they've been kind of on that downhill spiral effect. Even though they've hit some good, like they've had some good stride, but they've had a lot of problems along the way that have just given them bad reputation. Even though they've done some really good things, there's been a lot of offset to that. Especially so. I mean, Halo 4 multiplayer wasn't as good, but the story was great. I enjoyed the campaign, really enjoyed it. And then Halo 5, flip it, and then Halo Infinite was like okay, make or break, and it was kind of break. So reset's going to be good for them.
Yeah,
And
I just worry with like chainsaws, right? That like like you were saying, like you can definitely end up like cutting off too much, and there's no going back once you do. right? Like chainsaws are just that way. And so like if you tend to take a destructive tactic to restructuring, like that can be really bad, you know. And there's no undos, you know, in that kind of like environment. Like once you
Right.
destroy something,
Once
it's
you cut the
incredibly hard to
tree,
rebuild it.
it's
I was
you
thinking about this the other
can't
day. Yeah,
regrow it. But you can
like I
get
mean,
new
like
trees to
yeah,
continue the analogy. You can plant new trees for new growth. So that's what we're hoping for.
yeah. But that also reminds me of Resident Evil 7,
Wait. Whoosh. We're wishing back. Resident
where spoilers for a game that came out in what, like 8 years ago. But the beginning part of that game has you finding your wife like infected, and she attacks you with a chainsaw and tries to kill you, and it's like, whoa, that's not good.
is is the guy's name in that Ethan, right, or something like that? I
Yes,
think
Ethan.
it
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
that's his
that's
name.
a little
Yeah.
okay. This is a little bit too on the point right now, on the nose, on
I
the
cried during
nose.
the opening of that game because you have to essentially kill her
Yeah,
to keep her from
that's
like killing you. And like I actually had a dream that was somewhat similar to that too. But which,
that's really harsh. I mean, you think
yeah,
about. I mean, you do it in a game and you just go with it, but you actually think about something like that. That is intense right there.
I was shocked because like this is like a scary game. I hate scary games or whatever. And like I mean like but like they set it up so quickly of like, hey, this is your wife, you're in love, she disappeared. You don't know what happened. Like she said she was going to like visit somebody or something. Like you got emails from her and stuff and pictures and all of a sudden just no contact. And then you got like an email saying, "Help, I need you," and like gave you an address. You go there and like she's been kidnapped and infected and trying to kill you, and you have to kill her. And it's like, whoa, this is like the like this is a really heavy emotional investment. Like this is like Up kind of, you know, like the
Yeah,
first 20 minutes of Up.
honestly
It's like
that is true horror right there. I mean, and that's on the next level. It's not the action horror; it's like the whole emotional
yeah,
horror.
yeah,
They're already starting you on this roller coaster emotionally. I mean, that's yeah, that's intense.
yeah,
That's intense.
yeah. Like I actually like I cried. Like that was sad. Like having to kill her. It was like, oh my gosh, like I
And
like
that's
what?
just the
Like
first
this is
what
what?
5-10 minutes of the
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
So
I
you
mean
can
I
only
was crying the rest
imagine.
of the game for different reasons. But I mean like
But if you're that guy, like let's just say you're in that guy's shoes, you're having to deal with all this other stuff while maintaining this emotional roller coaster of having to do what you did and then having to live with all these things at all. I mean that's just yeah. Wow. That's yeah.
and that also kind of reminds me of how Xbox kind of took a chainsaw to their strategy of like not being third party or whatever, you know, and everything, and like keeping certain games like always on their system. With Forza Horizon coming to PlayStation soon, and you're going to need a Microsoft account for that, which I think is
Hey,
actually kind of brilliant. But I mean, like you
there
know,
you
like
go.
yeah,
Microsoft account. So I mean
because
they're
that's
kind of
where
bridging the
Xbox
gap
is
there.
now. Yeah, Xbox is the whole like you know wherever your Xbox account
They're
is. You know, I
taking
mean, like
over.
yeah,
They're like AI.
yeah, it's clever. But also, like, I mean, like, part of Xbox's new growth strategy, right? And it's really interesting to see that because there was, as you kind of referenced earlier, like some leaked hardware plans that like came out, reported on by Jez Corden of Windows Central, beginning with a partnered third-party handheld that's going to be Xbox branded coming out this year.
Wow. Did they
Are
know this
you?
is gonna be third or fourth quarter?
It'll probably be. Oh gosh, it'll probably be holiday. I would imagine.
Yeah, that pretty much makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, I can't imagine anything else making sense. But you
But
know,
then here's the question too, because they haven't announced their own Xbox gaming handheld, right? But in this article, it does mention that apparently what the understanding is that their own like first party Xbox gaming handheld and the successor to the Xbox Series X, are slated for 2027. So the question is, would you
Mm.
get a third-party handheld that's Xbox branded when you think that potentially, because we, again, hasn't been announced yet formally, uh, when you think that a first-party one is on the way in like 2 years?
Hmm. That's the question, right?
Yep.
Ugh, I mean,
Because me personally,
ob-
I would prefer, if I had to choose right now between a third party and a first party, I'd be like first party all the way, right?
yeah,
Like,
I think, but then you think about, okay, that's 2 years, and then two
and it might not
years,
even happen, you know? Like,
yeah,
there's a possibility that, like, like kind of like that. Remember that Xbox like streaming box that they were gonna like put out that was gonna like plug into your TV and you could stream there, and
hmm,
that never came out. That like
yeah,
entered
there
like they
it
had
could be
that
that.
working, and they just never came out. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, with it being 2 years, I mean, for testing, like let's say it's December of this year. I mean, I don't know. I probably myself would probably wait just because I already have all these devices. I've got my PC, I got my Xbox, I've got the old Xbox, and I don't really need a handheld device. And I can use my phone technically too, if I ever needed it. But usually where I game, I'm here. But if I was kind of wanting to workshop it, because I guarantee you this is kind of a test.
Oh yeah.
To
No,
me, it seems
probably.
like it's
Yeah. Yeah.
like a test. It's almost like all these games that have built, like these test games. It's like these other games that have built up to these other games that they workshop that through that game. You realize when you go back to it's like, oh, they were just building this game and they use the assets to bring it up to this game. And
Well, like
I guarantee you that's that's
I
going
can think
on.
of the perfect example for this too. In like that midnight, oh gosh, that midnight racing game that Rockstar put out,
Right,
and you
right.
can like absolutely see where GTA was coming from in that. Or like Red Dead Redemption 1's like online play, and you could totally see where they were going with that, with like seeing how they implemented it in both GTA Online and Red Dead Online. You know,
Right. Hmm.
like I mean, yeah,
Yeah, they just reskinned it a little bit, but the same
and
thought
then improved
process
it.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they just slowly keep improving the model, which is smart. And I think this is a good chance for them to figure out, okay, what's the handheld market going to be like. Um, you know, and I mean, I'm interested. We've been talking about the Xbox M, for a while,
yeah.
or
But again, like
so.
that Series M is like still a couple years out, it seems. And like Phil Spencer even said that recently, like that it's a few years out or whatever. Like I mean, like that's like one of those things where it's like, oh, like I mean, like he said, if it existed, it would be a few years out, and that's
Yeah,
like
and
such a
I'm
cagey thing to
thinking.
say, but it's
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm thinking it's gonna be like a seamless system. I think it's gonna pop into what you got. The whole. I think it's gonna be a whole system, in my opinion, because it's gonna work flawlessly between your Xbox and being portable. I think it's gonna be something
sure,
like that.
yeah. Um, I'm curious if they have any kind of connection between the handheld and the next gen like series, like whatever series Y or whatever, like whatever they decide to replace the Series X with. I'm curious if there'll be any kind of like combination between there. Maybe not quite as far as like the Wii U and the handheld portion of that, but like a reason for you to get both, because that could be super interesting, super expensive, but super interesting. Uh, but I mean, like, that's again, like, nothing's been announced by those at all beyond the fact that we're pretty sure that they both exist. It seems like, based on like, there's no rumors whatsoever of two SKUs of the console this time around, which kind of makes sense if they're planning on coming out with a handheld like in
Yeah, the
tandem.
handheld would
Yeah,
take that portion, right? Take that part of
yeah.
it, and it would make sense. And I wonder, okay, what if this? What if they have the mainstay console, right? Your main console that you can get, it's the top of the line, but it also has this feature that, somehow they connect, probably just like this, like a docking part of it, where it just seamlessly merges. I don't know.
Or like
That
a actual a real second screen experience kind of thing, like something that actually is like dedicated to that, like can actually work that way, because it's like it recognizes what game you're playing or whatever, and automatically comes like what's. I mean, there's some interesting things you could potentially do with AI with that too. That could be an
Yeah,
actually like good implementation of AI, maybe.
true enough.
I don't know that they're that far along in like implementing AI though. From my understanding, like Ubisoft or whatever is closer, but I don't know. Like it could be interesting, but I like oh man, like the my problem is like I kind of want this like third party branded one, but I don't know if I can justify it if I know that like first party ones are on the way. Like I mean like
Yeah,
because it's probably gonna be like $500 to $700 or whatever. And then like when those other two come out, I'm gonna want both of them. You know, like that's just me as an Xbox gamer. I'm gonna want both the next series, whatever, and the Xbox first party handheld. And
yeah,
theoretically, like you said, this third party one is probably a test. A to measure kind of like interest, but B also to like test out like a more touchscreen like friendly kind of like mobile like UI probably, hopefully. Because
yeah,
like
and
I'm
working in
using
the
Windows.
ecosystem of the multiplayer with
Yeah.
all these people too,
My
that
thought
are on
is
consoles and
too,
PC.
I wonder if they're going to ever like allow for like because I know that they want to have like their streamlined OS experience like in more places probably. Like I think Phil said something about that. Like at least with like having like an Xbox interface that's everywhere. I wonder if that would ever come to existing devices like my ROG Ally for instance. Where like they put out like a first party like downloadable kind of like
Like
you
a first
download
party
this and it
app, and you just
changes like yeah
yeah.
it changes like your UI because I'm
Hmm.
running Windows 11 right now on my ROG Ally and it's like a regular and I know there's things I can do like I know that there's like various ways to change the UI and make it more like friendly but like that's all like third party stuff that I haven't had the time or like the inclination, the motivation to get into. Like I'm super curious if Xbox was to put out like this thing that they're going to use for this third party one, like if they could actually like make it a software thing too, like and test it that way. But then I guess why get the third party one? I guess if that's the case. Unless you
Yeah,
want to test it there first and then like
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. I would definitely have to. I think for me, I'm right there with you on like I really just want to get the first party title stuff. That's just because 2 years isn't necessarily that long when you know it's coming
Right.
around. Plus, I mean, first and foremost, I'm probably not going to get this thing day one if I was to get the third party title, anyways. The third party handheld because I'd want to see, with anything, if you get it new, you don't get to see the feedback. I want to see some feedback, just a little bit, for
Sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Either way, whichever way you go, you need. I mean, I'd still, I don't know. There has to be somebody, I guess, to take the plunge, but I don't know. I'm
It would
not
be
that guy.
cool. Here's the thing: is like I wonder if they would do this because I'm not a Windows insider. I'm an Xbox insider, right? I wonder if I was a Windows insider or if I was an Xbox PC insider or something. That like if they would potentially like push out that software to test it, like even before this thing comes out. I don't know. I mean, maybe not, but like maybe. Like I feel like that would be a good way to kind of like get some bugs out of the way right away. You know.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Like we definitely need something better than just running on a device though, because like as much as I love my handheld, like if I don't have it plugged into a TV with like a mouse and keyboard, it's kind of a pain to navigate. And again,
Right.
I know that there's third party like ways to get around that or whatever, But like, if there was a first party solution for that, I would download that in a second. You know, like I
Right,
mean,
but
yeah.
there does need to be something like that. I mean,
And I want it
they've
to feel
had
like my
some stuff with
Xbox
the piece.
because the
Yeah,
Xbox interface is great. You know, I mean, like, yeah,
and I think that's where they've kind of tried to do that on the PC without success, but they've got to get better on that side of things because the game bar hasn't been great lately. That sort of
yeah,
thing. It's gonna be, it's gonna have to translate a little bit, especially on the third party device. So hopefully within the next couple months and through the rest of this year, they really start working on that because I mean I've been seeing more updates with it, but it's got to be like you said, like pretty much like a first party UI that kind of like takes over and understands what it means to like touch and interface like an Xbox does in a gaming system outside of like having the whole Windows fill. It's gotta transition. It's gotta be flawless. It's gotta be something that somebody, would really want to use outside of having, the PC side of things, like it
right,
doesn't need to be a PC, you know, but maybe that's just me. I feel like it needs to, well, when it comes down to it, it needs to feel more like the Switch does, I guess. Um, you know, work
sure,
in
yeah,
their
or even the Steam
interface
Deck when it comes
or
down to
or
this
this
Disney.
yeah, or the
Yeah,
Steam Deck,
yeah,
working inside their interface without having to feel like it's being a PC run, with being a little clunky. It needs to be fluid. It needs to be fluid. It needs
yes.
to work.
Well, like that was like the biggest problem with like I think one of the bigger problems with VR, right? Is that like it wasn't necessarily nearly as intuitive as it could have been. And so like when it comes down to it, you still need some handheld holding to like kind of like acclimate. And that can be a period where it makes or breaks things for you. Or like one of the things that I remember being told about like with VR was like every single second you wait feels like 10 times longer because you literally can't look anywhere else. Like you're stuck in that like headset. And so like I mean like every single second feels like a minute because like you've got nothing else to do. Like you're just there. And so like loading screens are the worst, you know? But
Right, and almost immersion breaking at that point.
right. Yeah.
It can is like, okay, was this worth it? Maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I
Yeah.
should have just done it the old way because what was so bad about it? You don't want to think about those things when you get a new device.
Exactly. Yeah.
What you want is to be so immersed that you just like are so immersed that you just forget about everything, and then it pulls you in so much that it's just fluid. And when you don't think about something, that means it's working, right? It's
Right.
working.
Exactly. Yes. That's absolutely true. Like that's true in everything too. Is like you really don't think about things like working when they work, you know? Like
Right.
you just kind of accept it like, hey, like, you know, you don't really even appreciate that it's working while it's working. But the
Exactly.
second it breaks, you notice that. You
Oh
notice
yeah.
that very, very much.
It breaks you
Yeah.
out. It breaks
Like
you out of the flow.
and I don't even want to get into a discussion of prices because who knows what prices will look like over the next, like, you know, even this year, let alone like 2 years in the future. Like, it could be astronomically more expensive, or it could not, you know, or I mean, like, we'll see. I'm kind of leaning towards the former, but we'll see. But I would prefer to get the Xbox first party stuff when it comes out, but like, that's like so far in the future. That's like 2 years away, if at all. I don't even know when they're gonna. Probably they would announce that next year if they were going to. Probably they would give this like room to breathe, and
Yeah.
so I would imagine in the announcements for this maybe at like Summer Game Fest or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
Yeah.
like, yeah. But we'll see. Like, I mean, like again, this is kind of like this is a report. Like this guy interviewed people. This is what he was told by people. He's got sources. He's usually pretty reliable. Like, I mean, like, yeah. We'll see.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah,
And I'm interested to see what happens this year for sure.
yeah. But Yeah, I think that that's probably a good place to wrap it up, unless you have anything else to talk about.
Oh, just one thing.
Sure.
We've been sitting here talking and recording, and we haven't been on the stage the whole time. So when I think about it, we've probably been sitting in the corner. So that's just kind of funny, a little
Yeah,
funny
I mean,
note there. But besides that, yeah,
as
I
long
think
as
that's a
Craig can
wrap.
still hear us,
Yeah,
that's what
Craig can
matters,
still
I
hear.
guess. Yeah.
We decided not to get up on the stage
That'd be
tonight. We
really
just
funny
wanted.
though if like Craig just wasn't listening this entire time because he's like,
Uh,
"Hey, you guys aren't in the center." like,
yeah,
like
you forgot
it's
where
like
the
Craig,
mics
come
are on the
on! like,
stage.
you need to tell us these things, Craig.
We're in the back room in the podcast room tonight. Okay. uh, no,
That's really funny.
I think that's it. I think we got it.
All right, awesome. Well, hopefully we'll be able to continue our regular episodes here on Mondays in Discord, and at least for the time being, and we'll see when we put them out online on podcast services. Don't forget to like and subscribe, or dislike and comment, as you will. Preferably the former, but hey, I get the latter. I understand. And I don't want to do the Johnny Bye thing, so I'm just going to say safe travels.
See y'all next time.
Get out of here, Craig.